Good afternoon, and welcome to the Haiti Legacy Kwanzaa celebration. My name is Afia Carter, and I welcome you to Durham and to the celebration of family and African American culture. Today, we are going to be talking about a lot of things, but in this particular segment, we'll be talking about the American Rescue Plan Act, which is the $350 billion bill that has sent an unprecedented amount of money into local municipalities. Today, I'm honored to have a couple of guests who are working to make sure that we have equitable distribution of funding for ARPA funds. But first, I would like to say Habari Gani. Habari Gani is a greeting that we use in Kwanzaa. It is the Swahili term for what's the news, which means what's going on. And the response to that is usually the day of Kwanzaa. There are 7 days of Kwanzaa. Today is the first day. And that first day is Umoja, which signals unity. So, Habari Gani, and then your answer is Umoja. Today, we have an amazing program, both in person as well as online. And I invite you, if you're in the area, to participate in person if you feel comfortable. Everything is outside as well as socially distanced. We have the candle lighting ceremony that happens at 1 o'clock directly after our discussion today. We have a West African dance and drumming performance that is happening at 1:30. And then we'll have the presentation of our community altar that is happening at 2 o'clock. And at 3 o'clock, we invite you all to come and sing together and lift our voices together in the spirit of Kwanzaa. And that will be happening at 3 o'clock. There's a marketplace that is open, and please feel free to come and visit our vendors. Most of them are outside, so feel free to come and feel safe if you're comfortable to wear masks and socially distance. And many of our vendors are local, and they will be providing for you wonderful opportunities to purchase items that will culturally represent all of us. Okay, so today, as I said before, we have a wonderful conversation that is going to happen with our members of Back in the Black. Back in the Black is a broad coalition of individuals, businesses, and organizations that are organizing to ensure equitable distribution of ARPA funds. The American Rescue Plan Act, as I said before, is a one use money into our municipalities all across the nation. And here today, I have 3 people who are all working on the American Rescue Plan Act effort. First, we have William Jackson. Then we have Kenita Stringer Standback. And last but not least, we have Cameron Smith. Hi, everybody.
Hey, Afia, thanks for having us.
Thank you for coming. This is holiday season, and there's a lot going on. And so I extend my sincere gratitude and thanks for you taking your time out today. And hopefully, we'll have a quick discussion and we'll let everyone get back to their wonderful holiday season. So, if we can start out by Everybody introducing themselves. If you can please say your name, the organization in which you represent, and your role in that organization, and what you hope for the American Rescue Plan Act. Let's start with Will.
What's up, everybody? Bart Ghani, happy Kwanzaa. My name is William Jackson. I am the founder and chief dreamer of Village of Wisdom, where we work with Black parents to create more culturally affirming learning spaces for all Black learners. We affectionately refer to this work as protecting Black genius. So if you've ever been to a Black Genius Fest or seen somebody with a Black Genius shirt on, uh, that is kind of an amalgamation of our work. Um, when I think about the American Recovery Act, as Afia talked about a little bit earlier, this is one of the biggest influxes of cash to come back to the people, I guess, in America for a very long time, probably dating back to like the 1950s or 40s. And so, um, traditionally or historically, when that much money has kind of flowed from the government back to the people, quote unquote, that money has not gone to Black folks. And so this is definitely an opportunity for us to collaboratively work together to make sure that that money kind of comes back to us. And when we start talking about, I think it's, upwards of like $100 million between the city and county of Durham. That's a lot of money um, to reaffirm, to help people even build new things in the Black community. And so, I just think it's really important that that we're doing all that we can to make sure that our people get access to those dollars, because we know that money definitely makes a difference, especially in this particular society. And so, I was definitely appreciative and humbled and excited to be invited into this. Always, big shouts out to Spirit House, led by Mama Nia. She definitely was huge and kind of made me aware of the situation, as well as Cameron from CIP. Both folks kind of, I think, around the same time, made sure that we knew about it personally, and we tried to do our best to share it with other people. So, not to try to talk too long, that's me and the organization I represent, and why I think this American Recovery Act funds are so important. And I guess the one plug I would say is just make sure that folks um, join our Facebook group, um, and make sure that you kind of learn about it. If you know a business owner, definitely sign up. We got some links I think that we'll drop or share out. So make sure that y'all kind of get plugged in, get tapped in. If you got a business, we want to know about y'all so we can make sure this money kind of really circulates in the Black community.
Thank you. Can we go with Cameron?
We can't hear you, Cameron.
Cameron, we can't hear you. It's okay. Look at the bottom of your screen, and there might be another mute in camera.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Sorry, I didn't click the proper mic in the first place. I was saying happy Kwanzaa, beautiful African people. My name is Cameron Smith, and I'm one of the co-founders and the current executive director of Communities in Partnership. We're founded, place-based here in Northeast Central Durham, is where the founders and more than 70% of the board currently live, work, and love. Um, William is one of our neighbors in the community, so shout out to William from NECD, Old East Durham. Um, Communities in Partnership is a majority Black and women-led organization that focuses on community development with a liberative economic development lens, centering the liberation of descendants of the African diaspora at the intersections of social determinants of health. And so we look at economic development in the traditional sense as being centering white liberation and what's good, specifically for people that actually created this whole system of inequity in the first place. And so the work that we do in CIP is trying to flip the script specifically on food systems, workforce development, entrepreneurship, and housing, and also community organizing and activism through a racial equity lens that centers the liberation of people who've been directly impacted, centering first and foremost who we are and who we were founded by were Black folks. And so I'm really grateful to be in this work and working for the liberation of our people, the continued struggles that we seem to have. And I vocal what William has already said in terms of this massive amount of money coming through. Historically, what has happened is the organizations who are very well networked with all of their networks in the municipal government, um, in the university system, um, in the federal system, generally speaking, have the first dibs at all the money, but they themselves are led by white people who are doing work on behalf of Black and brown people, and that needs to stop. What needs to happen is Black people who are accountable to, close proximity to, living in, with, and around our own folks, and who are accountable to our own people need to be charging the way in terms of how this money is spent. And so we also know that some of us have been co opted into this white supremacist system as well. And so I'm very clear that if you are a Black leader of an organization, that you need to be accountable to directly impacted Black folk. You need to be in relationship with them. You need to love them. You need to live around our people and be to a point where your proximity does not allow you to not be held accountable. And so that's what we're really vying for, is for us to be able, in Back in the Black, to be able to use these funds to actually create systems that aren't predicated on charity, because charity is a violent, inequitable system. So we're asking for the monies to be used for capacity, for infrastructure, for us to be able to rebuild our communities. Because if you hear Dr. Henry McCoy's research, and also Dr. William Darity, we were better off during Jim Crow and Reconstruction economically than we are now. So there's a problem with that. And so we need to have ownership of our systems once again. And so that's what I'm going to be really pushing for with the Back in the Black, and making sure we're holding the city and the county accountable, since Durham is so progressive, and saying that they don't want people to be hungry. They're tired of charity, or they're tired of people not having what they need. We're going to hold them accountable to make sure that they are operationalizing equity in this process, and actually ameliorating a lot of these problems and being who they say they are, and not just covering over a huge gaping wound with a small little band-aid. So that's my role in this.
Thank you, Cameron. And we have someone else who has joined us, Mama Nia. We are just introducing ourselves and letting everyone know what organization or business we come from, and what our vision is.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm sorry I'm a little bit late. Um, my name is Nia Wilson. I am the co-executive director of Spirit House Inc. here in Durham, North Carolina, um, and one of the coalition members for the Back in the Black Coalition. And, I would just star, check, ditto everything that Cameron just said. The Once we understood what was happening with the infusion of resources into our communities that has not happened since the 1930s, it was very clear that we had to quickly get together and do the work that needed to be done to ensure that Black people were not going to be left out again, as we were intentionally left out then. There were laws and policies that were created with the New Deal that made it impossible for Black people, for people who worked in service industries and things like that, to be included and to receive those kinds of funds. And although we were not necessarily suspecting that there would be racist policies that would be implemented, what we understand is that racism can both work overtly and covertly. And so, if we didn't act very quickly to make sure that our people understood that these resources are here for us, and understood that we do the work to make sure that that the way that the resources are distributed are done in an equitable fashion, that makes sure that the playing field is not only leveled, but that people who have been pushed to the back, who have been marginalized intentionally over the course of the history of this nation, had the ability to receive these resources that are meant for us. And so we pulled this coalition together. We quickly did that work to reach out to folks who could be helpful in our community, and people who didn't know anything about these resources that have been made available to us. And we've been working really hard to demand the equitable distribution of these resources in our community. I'm so proud and grateful of the work that's being done by the coalition, and hope that anybody who is watching this, who is in Durham, who wants to participate, a Black person in Durham who wants to participate, to please, please, please join us, because the work of creating an equitable Durham is going to be the work of all of us, and we need everyone to participate.
Thank you so much. And last but certainly not least, Kenita.
Habari Gani, everyone. I am Kenita Stringer Standback. I am a seventh generation North Carolinian, specifically rooted here in the Piedmont, which, as our daughter tells us, is no longer going to be the Piedmont because of climate change, which is just yet another reason why we need to be involved at the cellular level. And that means all the coint, not all the coint, but some of the coint that is being distributed through these ARPA funds. I am half of Alphabet Crew, LLC, which is a research consulting firm. We concentrate in data analysis from a social justice perspective, where what's our motto? Rooted in, I can't remember, I'm sorry, but we're dope. And what we do is look at census tract type information over our every 10 years that's been gathered in the United States since the early 1800s. We have over 200 years of data that shows the institutional and structural oppression economically of certain people in this nation, specifically folks like me whose ancestors survived coerced labor. So why we got involved was to just do some research and like tracking down when was the last time this kind of money came into the community. When did this money come into the community? How has being left out of these major economic situations, specifically like during World War II when the veterans got the GI Bill, right? A lot of white soldiers were able to get education, buy real estate, really do things to secure themselves economically and financially. But at the same time, these things, institutional things like redlining were happening where Black folks couldn't buy property with their GI Bill. They couldn't pursue education with their GI Bill. And it has continued to perpetuate economic inequity in our society. And it is historical, it is documented, and it is real. And what we did was just brought that lens of historical data and research into this conversation. And I think it is also really important, as everyone here has stated, for people who live in our communities, not these communities, because I'm in the community. You know, I live in the community, okay? So, you know, and my grandmother lived in this community. I've been a part of this community, my family has, for generations. And I think it's really, really important for us to understand the value of what we have, even though, you know, they might have all these gunshots and sirens around us to tell us that it's not valuable. It is valuable. And we need to do what we can to protect it and fight for it. And also, you know, demand what we deserve. And so this is why I'm involved, because I think it is time for us, and specifically as women of color who have been, you know, extremely strategically left out of this conversation, yet expected to carry a lot of the load of what the society. So I just think, you know, my ancestral mothers birthed this nation. They nursed this nation. They cooked for this nation. They ironed for this nation. They you know, prayed for this nation, right? And we are still here because of what they have done. And it is time for mama to get the point. And Habari Ghani, Umoja, when you love the black mama, you love your community.
Thank you for that, Kenita. I want to remind anyone who is viewing this that we have a petition. Back in the Black has a petition that's circulating that is calling for the equitable distribution of ARPA funds. Feel free to look that up in our chat and sign the petition, share the petition, and let people know about everything that you learn about here, whether it's brand new to you or if you just learned something new. Share that and get the word out. So I wanted to bring some deep context to the actual amount of money that has come and is coming to Durham. So the city of Durham is scheduled to receive $51 million, I think, and they've received half of that already, if I'm not mistaken. You all can correct me if I'm wrong. The county of Durham is scheduled to receive $63 million, and they've received half of that. So they received half in May, and they'll receive another half in this coming May of 2022. And Durham Public Schools is scheduled to receive $160 million. Now, there is a website that you can go to where you can see, because now you may be wondering how much money is being received in other cities of, people that your loved ones, and so forth. And so there's a website that you can go to. I lost a lot of my links in getting on this call. So if any of you all have the ability to get to that, I'd appreciate it if you could drop that in the comments, where you can go and look and see how much any municipality, any town, any city in your area or outside of your area around the country, how much they are scheduled to receive. And again, this is two pots of money, one that came in May of this year and one that's coming in May of this coming year. Okay, so we touched on this a little bit in our introductions, but I wanted to again just circle back to this point about the historical significance of the American Rescue Plan Act, and how in the 1930s we were originally cut out of that process, and the lasting impact of that today. So can one of you, maybe Will, can take that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's I mean, I think it's almost difficult to kind of to really explain like how lasting this impact is going to be, um, and what that will mean for everybody. And I guess obviously, like when we think back, like what happened when 95% of the dollars from the GI Bill didn't go to the Black community. One of the things that folks commonly cite is like the $100,000 wealth gap between the Black community and the white community. So, that gap is basically there's $100,000 in the bank for most white families, and for most Black families, it's probably less than like $20,000 or $30,000. And so when you have that much capital, you got to think about the things that you can do. For example, this Back in the Black thing is a really interesting thing because a lot of government funding kind of works on a reimbursement model, or that money comes almost after you do the work. So if you want to pay your staff members or your employees, and you know that some funding or a loan is going to come in, it helps when you have a whole lot of money in the bank, because you can eat up the time when people are asking for their paychecks, but you're like, well, I haven't gotten paid from the government yet, or my money from this order hasn't come in yet. And so what ends up happening is that when we have this like disproportionate investment, it makes it difficult for people to hold on to money and even make more money. Um, and then I think, the other thing when you think about, like, let's just talk about like an organization's budget. So I think, as an organization, transparently, about 2 years ago, we were working at a $500,000 budget. At a $500,000 budget, if you think about it, if you're paying everybody like a decent kind of amount of money, let's say they're making about $60,000 to $70,000 a year. Well, $60,000 to $70,000 a year times four, that's going to quickly get you to $240,000. That's before you're paying benefits. Benefits is typically about another $15,000 on top of that. So now you're talking about $75,000 for each of those four people, which now bumps you to about, what's that, $280,000, right? So like, now that $280,000 is just money that you're spending on your staff. We're not talking about the building that you have to be in. We're not talking about the goods and services that you're getting to the folks that you're working for. And so you have a very small staff, four people, all of them, let's say they're all doing program type work. And that's nobody to take care of making sure that you paid your bills, making sure that you picked up the mail, making sure this stuff gets sent out, making sure when the North Carolina state sends you some random like request for information that you're able to handle that stuff. And so then you're wondering like, well, why are people so busy? Why does it take so much money to do this stuff? It takes a lot of money to put food on people's tables so that they can take care of their children, so they can take care of themselves, so that they can work towards a particular good. And so when we start talking about $60 million that could flow in from the government into the Black community, then you start to see that one, it is a significant amount of money. But it takes a significant amount of money to kind of keep companies and keep organizations working. And so if we're talking about folks who might be able to get access to $500,000 or $1.5 million, like we requested, that means I'm just going to tell you right now, if we got $1.5 million from the city of Durham, we have a track record of putting more than 85% of our dollars back in the Black community. Right. So what we're talking about then is we're talking about 1.2, like at the least, that's going to go to Black folks that y'all probably know. And so what does that mean for the community? I don't know. Y'all tell me, like, what do y'all think $1.2 million would do for the Black folks that's around you? And I mean, I would probably say from what I know of the other organizations that are on this call right now, it's the same thing, right? Like that money is going right back to the community. And the people that work for these organizations live in the community. That's just kind of like what we do.
Yeah, when we talk about wealth gaps, which was the next thing that we were going to talk about, the racial wealth gap, we frequently talk about things in these like sort of nebulous terms. Like we have a term that sort of is an umbrella term for things, and it really doesn't always resonate with people who have real who are in crisis, who have real things and issues that are going on like in this moment. And so I really like the way you broke that down in terms of what will these organizations actually do with this money? Like when an organization is asking for tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars, like what does that really mean, and how far can that go, and who does it really impact? So
I'd also like to add to that just briefly about the smaller community groups and organizations that should be able to access this money. That we're talking about the people on the ground, as Will just said, the folks who are on this call, we all live in the community, our organization, we have a track record. But even beyond that, there are so many small groups and organizations of people who are doing work every day who don't have access to these kinds of resources, even in ways that some of us may have access to, that this money is for. And so it is really important that folks understand that, and that the decisions that are being made around how the resources are spent really goes to the people who are the woman who every day is giving out sandwiches when the kids get off the bus. Those things, all of that comes from her pocket. It comes from all of these people in the community that are doing the work in on the ground. It comes out of folks' pockets most of the time because they don't have access to the resources that, like, some nonprofits have. They haven't had the formalized education that has become a barrier, right, to getting things done in our community. It is actually a barrier. Some of the things that are put into place, and we understand that the city, that the county, that they, have a responsibility, a fiduciary responsibility, in order to report how the resources are spent. And so this is not a plea to actually imply that that is not something that we understand, but we also understand that there are people in our community who will help some of the smaller community organizations and groups do what need to be done to be able to report in a fiduciary manner that allows the city to do what it needs to be done to be done. And so it's easy to provide these resources to the organizations that have all of the things that are already in place, that have had the privilege of growing to the space where you can have those kinds of reportings, where you can write those kinds of grants. It's easy to do that, but that's not what these funds are for. And we have to be really clear about the fact that there are people on the ground every day who are doing this work. And those are the people that we've been attempting to gather to be involved in this conversation and to have access to these resources. And as Will said, access in a way that their own wages are livable, that they are not just taking money out of their own pocket to take care of the entire neighborhood, but that they're also able to pay their own bills, which doesn't often happen. I joke about, or it's actually not a joke. A lot of times I talk about folks who are not necessarily rooted or from the community, who run nonprofit organizations to help the community, and their mortgages are paid. Their mortgages are paid on the backs of the people who often don't have the resources, who can do the same thing and don't have the resources to do that.
And I'm just going to break in right quick to what Nia has said. So one of the things that I continuously bring up, and I see the eyes rolling and the sighs and all this other stuff, but this is the reality. So either, data oftentimes, or the worship of data, is rooted in a white supremacist construct, because we worship the numbers over the actual impact of the people's lives, because data is no more than the stories of what's actually happening to our people, of the lived experiences of people. So what we have been doing for I don't know how long is not working, but we're okay with that because of who's suffering and who's dying. Because Black lives really don't matter, even in Durham. Let's just be real. They don't matter, especially poor Black lives. Let's go even further, because we also got some class issues up in this place too. So if we're going to have some real conversations about that, what we're doing is not working. When we hear Dr. McCoy talk about the fact that the overall cumulative wealth of Black Durham is on par with emancipation, and this was pre-COVID, I shudder to think of that we overall at this point probably have no more wealth than our ancestors were when we were formerly enslaved African people. This is an abomination for a city like Durham to have numbers like this, and for people who are doing work on behalf of and have the power on behalf of poor Black and brown people to be doing this work on our behalf. It's not acceptable. It's not acceptable, because even for the organizations that are sitting on this call, we don't even have the capacity to have the reporting in place, to have the staffing in place, and all this other stuff that some of these large scale organizations have when they can go and get these multiple $1 million worth of grants. No, nobody has that on this call. None of us do. We'd like to have that. And some of us have some pretty damn good credentials. I'm just going to say it. And that also is rooted in white supremacy too. Because sometimes I'm sitting in the space with people and I'm wondering where you got them letters behind your name in the first place, because not one thing you say is making any sense. So we keep on doing the same thing because people are comfortable. They're comfortable with having the power. Power is very difficult to let go of for anybody. But we have to stop this mess, because we're actually regressing. We're not even staying static. We're not even staying still. We are regressing, and regressing quickly. And then on top of it, you add COVID, and you also add the mental health stressors and also the financial health stressors of being in a pandemic for our people, when we built this nation, we built this wealth in this nation. Stolen land, stolen labor, and stolen people. And so we need to have some really real conversations, because what I found with Durham is when they want to bring in people, they figure out a way to make stuff happen in spite of whatever barriers or legalities are in that way. They make it happen because of who benefits. What we're saying is be who you say you are, because it's time for you to benefit our people. This city has been a chocolate city for I don't know how long. Both my parents graduated from NCCU. My husband graduated from NCCU Law. This is a Black city, and it's about time that you give back to the very community that made this such a shining example to all the nation. Give it back to the people that actually built this city.
Thank you. So I want to, for the viewers, I want to tell folks a couple of things. So the city of Durham released a request for proposals in March, and they kept that on their website until they kept that open until July 31st. A lot of people didn't know about that. About the RFP. I know a lot of us didn't know about the RFP until about a week before it was scheduled to close. Anyone who did not put in a proposal before July 31st is not eligible to receive these funds from the city of Durham. In this round, they are welcome to apply in the next round, but we're not really sure of what that process is or when that's going to be. The County of Durham has not opened their process publicly. They've opened a process for internal county departments at this point, but we are encouraging everyone to go ahead and ask their county leaders when that process will be open to the public. That's the first thing. The second thing is that I want to make sure that our viewers know that they can go to the American Rescue Plan Act website, the government website, and read the bill. Once you read it, then you start to understand that this funding was not to go to organizations, individuals, or businesses that normally get funding from the government. It says it in plain language in the bill that this money is to go deep into community. It is supposed to be funding projects and organizations that do not normally receive funding. And so I want anyone who is out here listening, to not be discouraged about whether or not your organization or business has received funding in the past or has all the infrastructure or whatever. We realize that there are multiple layers of guidance from the Treasury where this money is coming from, around who can get money and who cannot. But the bill itself does not specify any of that. So right now, I want to make sure that we acknowledge and bring in Selena Hagins, who has joined us. I know Asada is still sitting, I think maybe in the waiting room. But Selena, if you could introduce yourself, welcome. Thank you for coming.
Thank you. Thank you for having me in the space. My name is Selena Hagins. I am the executive director of Dock Street Studios. I am happy to be here, happy to be in this space, happy to be a part of the movement, and to be a part of this conversation. Thank you again for having me.
Absolutely. Thank you for coming. And also, Asada, if you could introduce yourself and let us know how you've contributed to the Back in the Black Coalition, and let us know who you are and what you do.
Hi, I'm Asada. I have been helping with the media and getting the word out around the Back in the Black Coalition. I'm an artist and animator, and I'm very happy to help.
Thank you. And we have a Facebook page, an Instagram page, Twitter. And we're about to do TikTok, and Asada is the person who has created a lot of our graphics. She is also, full transparency, my daughter, and I love her to death. And she has art in her, literally in her blood, on both sides of her family and on every side of her family. And we appreciate her contribution here greatly. So if we could go to, and then we have some comments here. Thank you all for your comments. I think we're technically still trying to figure out how to respond to those comments. I know I don't have a little box in which to those who are on the call. If you have the ability to answer any of the comments, if you could do that, I'd appreciate it. One of the things that I wanted to make sure that we got to was about what people can do for now in terms of advocating for these funds, as well as in the future. And to that end, I wanted to make sure that everyone watching knew that Back in the Black is advocating for 45% of the American Rescue Plan Act funds to go to Black led, Black rooted, and Black owned individuals, businesses, and organizations that qualify for this money. So we want to be clear about that first, in terms of the number, in terms of how we came up with that number, but also to be clear on that we're not advocating for individuals, organizations, and businesses who are not eligible for this money to get it, but to be clear, like the bill was written in a very broad manner. And so in order to, to be within alignment of how the bill was written, almost anybody can qualify for this money. But the 45% is something that seems really drastic, and I would like for someone to speak to that. 38%, and I think I saw a different number that was more like 35%, but 38% of the population in Durham is Black, and 38% of our firms in Durham are also Black. And so, in order to do what we would call an equal model, it would mean that 38% of those funds would go to Black, led, Black rooted, businesses and organizations. But what we are looking at is an equity model. And what do we mean by that? Equity is really rooted in looking in the past and historic and in present day, trying to make sure that we have a level playing field now. Okay. And so that's why we are advocating for 45%. And this is significant because the city of Durham has had a racial equity task force, as well as other groups of people who have taken time, energy, resources to really sit down and clearly pinpoint what Durham needs to do as far as how to make our city better and move more towards racial equity. And money is part of that, right? And so now we have a windfall. We have a bunch of money that has already come, and now we have the opportunity to make good on our promises. So I would like to know what you all's thoughts are about that, about the fact that, again, we're asking for the 45% and not necessarily 38 or under.
I think you did an excellent job of answering the question you're presenting us. I mean, it is about an equity model, and and it's like that drawing you see of the children trying to look over the fence, and there's a child in a wheelchair, a short child, and a tall child, and then everybody gets a step ladder, but then the kid with the wheelchair still can't see. But an equity model is where everyone gets what they need in order to see, and that would be not having a fence. That would be everybody just being able to see. And unfortunately, the way that this country was executed, not necessarily formulated or idealized, right? Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, right? That's what we're told. But the way that that life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness was executed, right, was on displacing indigenous people, like literally committing genocide to take away what was rightfully theirs, kidnapping and importing people from across the Atlantic, right? And then conscripting people who come to this nation to work for free. I'm not talking about the enslaved people that they kidnapped and brought over here, okay? Because what we also don't talk about a lot is the historicity of our entire nation, how it's made up of so many different people and countries, and how oftentimes when folks who come here without a lot of resources are basically forced into some type of coerced labor. And if you're a woman, it can be human trafficked, coerced labor, right? And so we really have to reckon with that as a nation. And we don't talk about that. We don't talk about how, and I'm just going to be honest, rape is endemic to United States culture. We don't talk, it's not a pen, it's in, it is woven into it. That's how I got this color, okay? So we got to talk about that. And we have to address it. And we have to bring it forward. And for me, what that means is 7 generations ago, my great-great-great-grandfather was enslaved at UNC Chapel Hill. And to this day, I owe over 6 figures in college loans. Now, I'm grateful that the president has extended the moratorium on loan payback, but there's also a movement in this country to not pay back student loans at all from those of us who owe them. So, you know, when we say that we are at our company, Alphabet Crew LLC, we say that we are historically led and data driven. And I heard what you said, Cameron, about how data is very from a white supremacist perspective. That's because the whole way that we've been taught about information is from a white supremacist situation. Now, I'm a librarian, and that means that I have learned the cycle of information creation. I have learned how it is created, distributed, and monetized. Okay. So it's very important for us as people, right, to have access to those knowledge resources as well, to have access to those books and those articles. So I say data is phenomenological. It's just as important phenomenologically as it is numerically.
Yeah, thank you for that. I think it's important to really, look at this piece in terms of how, as Cameron said, that we focus so much on numbers and not what's behind those numbers. But I really did want to get to this piece around why we chose the 45%. And Nia, could you, or Will? Okay.
You
I
go,
only,
Nia.
okay, I'm just going to take a minute and then I will you speak too, because I kind of want to speak to the heart of our people. So we may look at 45% and think that it's a lot, but we also need to understand what we've been conditioned to believe about ourselves, which is that we don't deserve what we are owed. And so it's absolutely not a lot when you consider all of the things that Afia and Kanita have said about the contributions of our people to this nation, the contributions of our people to this city, and the fact that the disparities were intentional. Like, we really, really have to understand that despite what you may think about someone who may be nice, the disparities were intentional in order to build wealth for the people in power. And so, in our endeavor to demand equity for what we know, and again, what our city has committed to, our city has committed to equity. Well, that comes with resources. It's not just a nice word. You cannot create equity without resources. And so looking at the numbers, understanding what businesses and organizations already exist, how many people are already doing the work in our communities in order for there to be equity. The 45% is the amount that needs to go to Black and Black-led organizations, individuals, and businesses. That is the only way to create equity, and it is what we are owed. And we need to hold on to that.
Thank you for that. Like I said before, I can't really see the chat very well, but I did see this one comment about looking towards white money and looking at funding ourselves. And I want to make sure that people understand that this money is government money. Have paid into that money, no matter what our race, gender, whatever. We've all paid into this fund. And so this is not white money. This is government money. And we are all here, which means it's our money. Okay. And so I just want to address that this money is not white money. This is our money that we are asking for, that we've already paid out. And so I just wanted to make sure that I addressed that.
Can I speak to that just right quick? Like, I just got one quick thing to say. You know, organizations like Facebook are funded by the government with our tax money. And so this is a chance for Black businesses to have access to that kind of money.
Selena, I haven't had an opportunity to get you to comment. I just wanted to make sure that Knox Street Studios is doing some amazing work in the STEM field. And I just wanted to make sure that you got an opportunity to talk about that and the impact of those funds on what it is that you all do.
Yeah, thank you. Our focus is on career exploration in STEM. And we have launched a pilot program for an apprenticeship program out of UNC Chapel Hill School of Medicine's IT department. So we just recently graduated our first cohort of 2 apprentices who went through their a pipeline program for them to gain experience in coding and in web design. And so they are career pivoters, and these are BIPOC adults. And that's one arm of our work. And the second is focusing on robotics and coding for BIPOC youth. And our partnerships with Duke University, as well as McDonald's. So right before the pandemic, we were actually hacking away inside of local McDonald's. We just set up shop there. We got some computers donated by the Cramden Institute, set up shop at a McDonald's, and had families come just to spend a Saturday with us learning how to code. And from that, we've evolved and enjoyed the involvement of our impact, because we are now able to reach more students with a lot of the virtual components that we've blended into the work that we're doing. Just recently, we partnered with the city of Durham to run their youth 13-14 career exploration program for 8 weeks. And so with that work, we are excited and looking forward to 2020. And we're excited to work with more youth. We're excited to do more exploration programs for youth in STEM, more apprenticeship programs, and enhance our partnerships.
Thank you for that. I wanted to make sure that anyone viewing this knows that although we have a lot of nonprofit organizations that are in the coalition that are on this call, there are also folks that represent private businesses that are also in this coalition, and folks that represent business organizations like the Greater Durham Black Chamber of Commerce, who are representing private businesses that are also in this coalition. Also, I want to make sure that people know that private businesses are eligible for this money. So it's not just nonprofit organizations. Okay, well, we are near.
Afia, can I just say something really quickly?
Absolutely, Cameron.
So I know organizations, so I can speak. I don't mean to speak on behalf of folks on here, but I know most of us, because we have to work together, it is a both and scenario for most of us that are working nonprofits. We're just using the nonprofit industrial complex to be able to fund for profit and systems change for our people. So it's not this charity based model. I'm done with that. I'm done. I know Nia's done. William. I see what Selena and them are doing over there at Knox Street, and and I know that what we are doing is the money that we built off the backs of our that was built off the backs of our people. We are turning it around and building systems that we own, systems for food, for housing, for entrepreneurship, for STEM research, all sorts of think tanks, all sorts of stuff that white people have been able to enjoy, that bring out the creativity and the livelihood and the beauty of life. And that's what we're using this, and it's a both and, it's not an either or. So this dichotomous thinking, it's not we are diunidal in our thinking as a people. It is a both and for us. So that's not the way we're rolling, over here. So I'm very clear, this system of economics, the way it was created, that's why we have some badass folks on this call and all around us to upturn that thing so that we can actually make money, not the same way white people do, where you have a top or what some of our folks, the top talented, that needs to be done away with. We want everyone to thrive. Everyone needs to make a minimum living wage, which in Durham right now is you can't even breathe unless you're making 65 to 70 plus benefits on top of that. So that's what we're talking about, building systems that can accommodate that, educate our children, take care of our elders, give us good, solid health care, not bullshit mess, good, solid health care for our people so that we can thrive. That's what we're all about, is thriving. And we're very clear on that because there's a lot of us who've gone to school and know how to turn this economic system upside down. So go on, Will. I know you're going to say something.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to get off the phone today and not talk about the fact that our city is being sacked by gun violence. And for me, this gun violence stems from folks not having access to money. Folks are fighting over territory, folks are fighting over food, folks are fighting over access to capital. And the reason why they don't have access to capital is because of how we have been systematically been excluded from that process. And so for me, it would be ethically ingenuous, intellectually ingenuous to not go after money that has been basically been made off of our backs, right? And so, I just think it's really important for us to always, as a community, remember that we are not the enemies of each other. At least the folks on this phone are not the enemies of each other. We have all shown commitment. I mean, I think I'm the rookie here, and that's 7+ years, right, of commitment to this particular community and working with other Black folks. And we got plenty of Black folks that vouch for us. But it's not about proving a point. I think the biggest point that I wanted to say is that if we think about 45% of those dollars, let's just say 45% of the 60 million, right? So that's probably close to 35 million or so that's going into our community. How much of that money can reach these communities where folks are hurting and therefore then taking the lives of other Black people? And I think that that's the conversation we need to be kind of vigorously debating and figuring out how we're going to get money in the hands of our folks, so they don't feel like they have to kind of take somebody else's life, because if they don't, then they're not going to eat, right? Because nobody wants to be in that catch up. Nobody wants to be in that circle of death. Folks are in that circle of death because they're in a survival piece, right? And so we're really going to have to focus. And that's the goal of this, right? If we can get that money to the 38% of the firms that are Black owned, then I have a lot of faith in our community that we would be able to turn that stuff around. But without that money, I'm not sure, because the thing that I'm really curious about just even today was that, like, yeah, we're 38%, but I don't think we're 38% of the value. What I'm saying is that I think if you added up the 38% of the firms that are Black owned, would they be worth 120 million? And would that 120 million be 38% of what Durham's firms are? I doubt it, right? But we should be. We should be. And we're talking about an equity model. We're talking about making things right. If we're talking about justice and restoration, we should definitely probably be more.
Yes, thank you. Well, we're a little over time, but I want to make sure that anyone watching this is invited to join Back in the Black. Like I said, we're an extremely broad coalition made up of individuals, businesses, and organizations. Our commitment is absolutely to the American Rescue Plan Act funding, but we have also all committed to make sure that we look at any form of funding as far as from an equitable standpoint and an equitable distribution model. So I would like for us to go around and just have a like a one word type of, closing. And thank you all so much for your time and your energy. You, I love you guys, and I love you all. And if we could just go around, start with Cameron, and if you could popcorn Cameron to someone else to just give one or two words to close out. Thank you so much.
Hold folks accountable to be who they say they are and to change the system.
I would say join the coalition. We need you all in this, and we are more powerful together than we are alone. Individuality is also a white supremacist mindset. We are a collective people. We work collectively. Join us.
I would say unity and accountability. Unity and accountability.
Yeah, I mean, Emoja, Unity, I'll just jump on that bandwagon as Kwanzaa, and let the dollar circulate. So please sign that petition that we dropped in the link earlier. If you know a Black-owned business, whether that's a nonprofit or a for-profit business, please let them, please make them aware of this particular thing. We're trying to put, money in folks' hands. So please do that.
I'll just reiterate what everyone else said. Unity. We're stronger as a fist than we are as fingers.
And Asada?
Yes, unity and act. Sign the petition and let folks know what is going on.
Thank you. And I would close with equity is not a destination, it's a journey. Like you just can't say equity 5 times and it materializes out of the atmosphere. It's something that we all have to work towards together. I thank you all for your time today. Happy Kwanzaa. May you have great rest and relaxation and focus in terms of the new year. And to all of us, all of you all out there viewing us, thank you so much for your time and your energy, and for your comments, and for your thoughts. Happy Kwanzaa, and have a great rest of your day and the rest of
Thank you,
2021.
Afia. Thank you for being point and for leading us here. Thank you so much
No
for
problem.
everything that you've done.
It is my pleasure and honor to be there with you all. Thank you.